what's going on. Holly Doan says Air New Zealand becomes the first big carrier to drop the climate goal. So that's good news. That's unexpected. I didn't think that was going to happen in the short term. Wow. Moving on, let's talk about the invasion ongoing in the West. 6Buzz TV says, here's a Toronto ice cream truck with a brand new sound. Here we go. Weird, right? So, very, very interesting use of sound. Holly Dones says, this is the same thing, asked whether people think the government of Canada was on the right track or wrong track when it came to managing immigration. Everyone believed it was in the wrong direction. True North says a viral photo of a man defecating in front of a gas pump in Brampton, Ontario is sparking outrage online, while some are calling the image a fake. So there was an MP. No, it was Raj Grewal. Raj Grewal, former MP Raj Grewal, said the image is fake, like it's been AI'd or whatever, which is the go-to defense of everybody. Remember when they said Joe Biden's mental decline was actually deep fakes, right? It's actually you're watching videos that aren't real. But it was real, and this is also real. And I don't want, like, there you go. That's enough, right? Like, there's a video of it. There's a video of it. You can watch a video of a man pooping on the sidewalk in Canada. Why? Why is this happening? I know why this is happening. We're being invaded, and it's a demoralization ritual, right? But we shouldn't accept it. We shouldn't just sit around and be like, well, what can we do, right? If you get offered two bad options, you say, I reject both your bad options, and we're going to do the third option here. We're going to do this thing. What are they going to do, right? Well, you can only take these two options. That's what we've been forced into for years. That's the problem. Kirk says, Chrystia Freeland is acting. Okay, so let's talk about housing. This is the scam. This is the scam that they're running on us, okay? The car dealership negotiation trick, the 4 square method. Negotiating the price of a car at a car dealership is a sucker's game. Smart car buyers know to never set foot in a car dealership when it comes time to haggle. It's way more effective to do all your negotiation via phone and email. What we're going to reveal in this article is the most common negotiation technique dealers use to sucker car buyers out of their hard-earned money. It's called the 4 square method. The good news is that you will never have to encounter this sleazy technique as long as you follow the car buying method that they're suggesting. But it's always interesting to see how slimy dealerships can be when ripping off customers. Note that not all dealerships use this technique. How the 4 square method works. The 4 square method is a negotiation method that is designed to confuse car buyers by mixing the price of the car, the down payment, the trade-in value, and the monthly payment into one sheet of paper as seen below. So you've got the trade-in value, the price, the down payment, and the monthly payment. So you're going to have all sorts of numbers on here repeated over and over again, and you're going to get confused. And as you get confused, the person who's running the scam knows they only want you to focus on the monthly payment or the most important thing to you. And that leaves them a lot of room to play with 3 different boxes to get that monthly payment to where you need it to be. Chrystia Freeland is running that scam now for CMHC and the housing lenders and all the rest. And she's distracting the new home buyers with exactly the same thing. It's a little bit more sophisticated, but it's functionally the same thing. Here's Kirk to fill in the details. He says Chrystia Freeland is acting like she's doing anyone a favor by introducing 30-year insured mortgages for the first-time home buyers. Mortgage 1, $500,000, interest rate 4.5%, amortization 25 years, payments $2,767, balance at the end of the 5-year term $438,981. So you've paid $60,000 in principal, you've paid interest, and you have 20 years left, right? And your mortgage will be paid off in 20 years. Mortgage 2, same amount, $500,000, interest rate 4.5%, amortization 30 years, payment $25.21, so just $200 savings really, and balance at the end of the term $455,501. Right? The minimum savings in monthly payments adds much more in interest costs paid by the borrower, another $70,000 over the mortgage lifetime in this example. This makes the banks more money, more risk for taxpayers, and more debt to pay for home buyers. Canadians don't need more debt. We need a government that's focused on wealth and value creation. This is another thing that isn't needed. Just stop mass immigration. Yeah, yes. And it's sophisticated because it's not focusing necessarily. It is using the monthly price to get to the vehicle down, but there's a whole bunch of other variables talking about this. Well, actually, I guess the only variable is the time, right? The only variable is the 5 years. So it's going to cost you $70,000 to do that. Is it worth it? Given right to the banks. Crazy. I mean, it's crazy. That's a lot of money. Table Salt says new inventory flood in the Toronto area, 6 months of inventory on the market. Real estate stats for July to date, sold 4,198, new listings 14,729, active listings 24,800. So I think that, and I said that the prices need to come down, right? If you hold a mortgage, a $900,000 mortgage on a house that's worth $300,000, it's not so good, right? So like people are not going to be happy about prices dropping for a whole bunch of different reasons, but the prices have to come down because people can't afford the inventory that's on the market. There's a lot of inventory sitting. So that's interesting, right? So interesting stuff happening in the real estate market in Canada. Shane says, this is the largest deception of 2024. He's responding to Christia Freeland, and she says, our government is getting 4 million more homes built so Canadians across the country can afford a home. We're putting shovels in the ground by cutting red tape, working closely with provinces, territories, and municipalities, and offering low-cost financing to builders. So all of these things are supposed to be building 4 million homes or something to that effect. And the housing starts have stalled, and we're not going to get, well, he says we're not going to get past 240,000. Yeah, we don't have the manpower, we don't have the talent, right? You need more than just somebody who can stand there and parge something or stand there and hold a ladder for the scaffold, right? From yesterday. Shane says this is the largest session. The housing prices that the Liberal government has put in place since taking office are hardly being reversed. In Canada, the rate of new home construction is currently at 240,000, and it's unlikely that capacity will rise above that point anytime soon. Yeah. That's right. That's true. True North says the city of Ottawa may soon erect tent-like sprung structures to deal with its, quote, unprecedented level of irregular migration. Illegal border crossers are not irregular migration. They changed the language on that, according to a new memo from city staff to Ottawa's mayor and city councillors. Why should Ottawa taxpayers be on the hook to pay for sprung structures for homeless foreigners who came here for no good reason whatsoever? Send them home. I'll pay $800 max per person for a plane ticket. They can buy their own snacks. So, no, like honestly, they could sell their cell phone on Kijiji. They can do something, but they have to go. And yesterday I shared a plan of how to practically accomplish mass deportations. And I think it's very, very viable. Very viable. And all we have to have is a government that is not actively trying to sell out the Canadian people to globalist interests. That's all we need. Is it possible? Could we do it? Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. Steven says Canada's financial system may be just weeks away from crisis. It's probably more lucrative to not explain this to you normies, but whatever, no one's going to change the trajectory. So nothing's going to change what's going to happen. Let's talk about Canada's upcoming credit crunch, but first a primer on credit. So I'm not monetarily an expert or anything like that. Some people like money the way I like politics, and I like politics. I can just see it. It presents itself very clearly to me. Like when people are lying, I can usually spot it, right? But people who are good with money, a good opportunity to put money into, they can spot it, right? And I wish I had that opportunity or that skill rather than spotting liars, I suppose. But I don't. So this is just, I think this is interesting. I think this is going to have an impact. I think the first tab that I'm going to go through from Stephen helps explain the second tab a little bit. But fundamentally, the governments are engaged in a game that's sophisticated to the point of being very difficult for you and me, normal people, to understand, people who aren't interested in money. And I mean, I'm interested in money in that I like money, but I'm interested in money in a practical way where I'm looking at my monthlies and going, I really should be pulling in a couple more million this month. Like, I wish I liked money like that, right? But like, we're not trained to in Canada, and my family was much more the other way, like left wing, let's help people, rah, rah, rah. And I think most people are like that. And the government exploits that in order to have sophisticated scams where we think we're getting the good end of the deal, right? Oh, my monthly payment's really low. And in reality, you get a situation where actually you're getting screwed, right? So first, I guess I'll tell you about this. The Bank of England knew that it was them that caused the issues with the UK economy in Q3 2022 and not the contents of the Truss budget. So why didn't they admit that at the time, hold up their hands and say the attacks on the government were wrong? And for reference, he says a working paper quietly pushed out by the Bank of England in May 24 has admitted that 2/3 of the spike in gilt yields in October 22 was caused by liquidity after solvency hedging risk. So, and there's an LASH acronym that goes along with that. I remember reporting on this. I remember talking about this at the time, talking about how the gilt yields were spiking to a degree that people had never seen. So I guess that was a plan to get Truss out. They were like, oh, her budget's terrible. Look what it's doing. Look at the damage it's doing. So that's interesting. So they knew they were responsible for that. And Mark Carney, Bank of England, Mark Carney, was he involved in that? I don't know. But Mark Carney has a history with the Bank of England. So interesting, right? All of that's interesting. And then here's Stephen. He says, some people assume the central bank just picks an interest rate. Nope, credit is based on supply and demand. When supply exceeds demand, cost falls. If everyone wants to lend you money, you don't pay a lot. That's why Zuck's mortgage is only 1%. The opposite is also true. If you need more money than the market wants to lend you, the cost rises higher. Think of payday loans. When the global financial crisis hit, everyone wanted to lend stable democracies money. This led to an era of low rates, cheap loans for all. The reason this was attractive was due to decay control, also known as inflation. The bonds investors bought were issued in more stable currencies, which managed inflation well. The United States is the global reserve currency and usually the biggest winner, but Canada also has a very stable banking monopoly. Cheap loans for all. In Canada, there's two main types of bonds that attract investors, government and mortgage bonds, guaranteed by the government, but they pay a higher yield. Now let's circle back to inflation. That is something the central banks try to control. It's another supply and demand situation. Too weak, central banks cut the rates to stimulate demand and demand faster than supply chains. To stimulate demand faster than supply chains and creates inflation. Too high, rates rise to slow consumption, slowing inflation. Got it? Hopefully you do, because here's where things go weird. In February 2020, inflation was healthy 2.2%. If you think inflation's being at 2.2% is healthy, I think we could probably have a 0% inflation and be quite like robust and good with that. But anyway, I digress. 2.2 is just 0.2% above the target rate, which is right in line with what the Bank of Canada is directed to do. It drops to 0.9% in March based on declines in crude, travel, restaurants, and car rentals. Cheap credit doesn't stimulate consumption of physically restricted products, so it inflates other areas. And he's got a reference. Canada went on a borrowing spree, not just for emergency-related issues, but full-on helicopter money with no scrutiny. If inflation doesn't rise to target, the central bank will engage in quantitative ease, QE. It expands its balance sheet to create excess credit to boost inflation. Except inflation was 3.4% by April 2021, over 50% above target in a year. Remember transitionary inflation? It wasn't in transitionary segments. A year later, I was invited to Parliament to testify and explain the Bank of Canada was still buying bonds to absorb government borrowing. For good measure, I found out the Bank of Canada studied what to do if the government is borrowing so much they can't conduct proper monetary policy. The government was borrowing because it was cheap. The central bank was making it cheap because the government was borrowing. A circle jerk of idiots. The week before, Tiff Macklem, the governor of the Bank of Canada, testified that it was foreign countries. The week after, he said it was them. That was thankless. I should have just bet against the currency and watched it collapse, maybe next time. Anyway, fast forward to Freeland's pressure to politicize SWIFT. Remember in 2008 how the world piled into Western bonds. China took the opportunity to explain to countries why they needed to diversify, since they can be shut out of the global financial system for non-NATO conflicts. It's hard to shed US dollars, but Canadian dollars, not so much. There's a lot to that. And then another link for a reference if you're interested. 13, remember those mortgage bonds? Well, the government never tried to solve its housing bubble. It was generating reasons to give developer friends subsidized loans. After they inflated home prices, they piled into easy immigration. Record prices occurred at record low immigration. Immigration ramped up a year later to create cover and generate more state-subsidized loans and handouts. They would crowd the market further, explain they need to build more for low prices. Behind your back, they explained higher prices are needed to build more. Whoops. Now here's the problem. There's record low demand for Canadian-denominated bonds. Mortgage bonds fund this two-bit scheme. Good thing the million IQ government had this idea. The government will borrow to buy the mortgage bonds itself. Even the CMHC warned against this. Not just because the government is issuing, guaranteeing, and buying its own debt. Mortgage bonds have higher yields, so it attracts different investors. The government assumed it could pocket the difference. It just lost that capital, lowering the demand further. Now, this is where it gets comically bad. Let's circle back to the bonds the Bank of Canada bought that I warned about. QE is balance sheet expansion. To prepare for the next recession, it needs to engage in QT, quantitative tightening. This is the process of removing liquidity. Liquidity is the cash money in your bank account that you can go out and spend, right? That's liquidity. The Bank of Canada lost $6 billion last year dumping these. Borrowing on behalf of others has a cost, either higher rates or monetary weakness. They know you don't understand it, and that's what they love about you most. But now no one wants bonds, so now the Bank of Canada has a problem. Since all credit competes, this distorts short-term markets. At least one bank is complaining how unloading QT is crowding the market, causing higher short-term borrowing costs. It's unlikely the Bank of Canada will deleverage before the next recession, so the recovery for that recession won't be easy. The liquidity issue is becoming even more apparent. The Bank of Canada dropped a notice they'll increase short-term facilities by 200% on a Friday afternoon, effective before market on Monday. Increases in short-term liquidity are normal. Emergency increases in liquidity are not. This isn't to say Canadian banks will fail and you'll wear barrels with straps on the street. Canada has GSIBs, so the world will grind you up and sell you as Soylent Green to create liquidity before the banks fail. But virtually no one understands how much stress is about to hit the system. And he says, before inflation is so low, crowd wakes up. If prices rise in the woods and no one is around to hear it, do you still lose purchasing power when you try to buy stuff there? Yes. Yes. And I think that a few days ago I was talking about how the banks were injecting emergency cash because their assets to cover the missing liquidity for the smaller banks who wanted the bigger banks to give up some of their to sell some of their assets to give up some money and so on and so forth. They couldn't do it. I think this plays all into that, right? Like the money that is being moved around it's getting more and more difficult to play those games, and people are realizing it. And what's going to be the outcome ultimately? Well, I don't know. But it seems like people are saying, hey, there's going to be a lot of stress hitting the system. What does that mean practically? I wish I could tell you. I really don't. I really don't have an idea, but it seems like not good. And then all the government's going to do afterwards is what the UK government did. Like, oh, we knew we were causing that. And that's it. And like it had political fallout. There were things that happened because of it. It's not good, right? It's bad. But still, not that nobody seems to care, but the right people who should care don't. Because they're paid off by the current regime, powers that be, you name it, right? So it's interesting to me. It's very, very interesting to me. And I think that all of this monetary stuff is a vector of attack that's a very sophisticated fifth generation warfare vector of attack because you don't notice it. And it happened to England in the 1980s. Soros shorted the pound and hugely impacted that country and that country's wealth and buying power and standing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we're watching a similar thing happen now with all of this. Like, and we're not reacting fast enough because society is not accepting the reality of the situation because we're too slow and because the media lies. Canada Proud says the Trudeau Liberals are giving various invitation-only organizations $20 million to run a program called Renewed Women's Voice and Leadership in Tanzania, Somalia, and Senegal. So it's just like a massive waste of money, like just a huge, massive waste of money, right? It's very hard to get permission for something, right? But if something happens, like the monetary stuff, if something happens and people are directly responsible, we did X, it caused Y, you blamed Liz Truss, but actually, haha, it was the Bank of England. There's nobody being held accountable. And the same thing is going to happen moving forward. And the same thing is even is happening not just with monetary policy, but with fire policy in 15-minute cities. They want 15-minute cities. If a fire happens and destroys your house, well, you'll just move into a 15-minute city and everybody's happy, except for the people who lost their house, right? But the government gets to play hero because they'll give you a replacement box condo, right? Don't worry, it's stackable, which, again, if they came to you and said, listen, we're going to take your house and burn it down and you're not going to be allowed to be in the neighborhood anymore because it's being naturalized or something like that for the United Nations naturalization program. But you can live downtown at high rise, unit number 1,842 on the 82nd floor. You'd say no. You'd be like, haha, get out of here. F off, I own this place. No, I'm not doing any of that. But if they burn it down, right, through Parks Canada in action, through climate change stuff, and then give you a box on the 82nd floor, you'll say, oh my gosh, I don't know how we would have gotten through without the government, right? And so it recasts the government as not bad guys when they are the bad guys. They are the bad guys. Paula says Jasper will be a 15-minute city now. Planned? Probably. Here is a municipality of Jasper note from April 16th, 2024. So this is going back a little way. And it says, recently I had the opportunity to attend the CMHC National Housing Conference in Ottawa. To say it was eye-opening, hopeful, and inspiring would be an understatement. I feel I'm returning to home with a toolbox full of ideas, proven methodology, and gumption to tackle Jasper's acute and unique housing crisis. Across the country, municipalities are challenged with a similar crisis. 3.5 million homes are needed by 2030. Christia Freeland said they were going to do 4 million now. We are no different than the rest of the country in the fact that what we need is safe, stable, and appropriate housing for all. Legalizing density is the single most important thing we can do in Canada to deliver housing in a climate-smart way. Removing parking minimums. We are a 15-minute city. We have public transit to enforce the antiquated view that vehicles take precedence over housing has to end immediately. So they're moving the pieces before the disaster that they've been warned about for years and years and years and years, since 2017 at least, right? And when the disaster happens, they've got the pieces in place to create higher density, 15-minute cities, transit-centric concentration camps, right? Here you go. You're not allowed to leave your district, right? There you go. You're welcome, comrade, right? Pretty scary stuff. I would like to say no. There is a third option. The third option is you guys are traitors. And we're not taking either of your bad ideas. Let's talk about Venezuela very quickly. SSG says, this is the plot twist I didn't expect. I've been talking about this for days. What I do know is that we are all led to believe that Maduro stole the election from his opposition. Was it smoke and mirrors? Are we witnessing another color revolution in Venezuela? Kim.com says President Maduro says the CIA killed John F. Kennedy, tried to kill Donald Trump, and wants to coup his government. So this is an active coup, he says. I'll read what he's saying. I'm going to mute him. Here we go. He says, the North Americans put a smile on their diplomatic face of deception, but behind they carry a dagger. And if you believe their smile, if you get careless, they turn around and stab you. So they have acted for almost 200 years, assassinating presidents, assassinating leaders in the world, assassinating presidents in the USA. But John F. Kennedy, who killed him? Saddam Hussein. The system, he didn't say Saddam, I did. The system, proven. They created what is now known as a false positive with a man named Oswald. This is well known, well denounced in a documentary, a film called JFK, well documented. Kennedy was killed by the criminal mafia in Miami and by the CIA because he was working to end the Vietnam War. They kept the war running, and to reach an understanding with Cuba and end the blockade and aggression against Cuba. In fact, it is known that the same day he was killed, at the same time, the news was made public November 22nd, 1963. Fidel Castro was in Veradero in a diplomatic house and was talking with a special envoy of President Kennedy and was giving him 2 boxes of Havana cigars to take as a gift because President Kennedy liked Cuban cigars. So it's interesting the allegations being levied by Chavez. He's saying this history proves, I suppose, that this is another color revolution. Maybe. It's certainly plausible. It's certainly something that yesterday I thought totally could be. This guy's minute, and he's saying the same thing. He says this is an attempted coup d'etat underway in Venezuela as the U.S.-backed opposition is trying to overrun yesterday's election result. Here is somebody out of Venezuela.
There is no doubt that an attempted coup d'etat is underway here in Venezuela. The only question is how successful will it be? Yesterday, less than 24 hours ago, President Nicolas Maduro won the 2024 Venezuelan elections. He gained 51% of the vote. His closest challenger, Edmundo Gonzalez, won 44%. The results were immediately ratified by several regional countries, including Bolivia, Nicaragua, Honduras, and Cuba. It was also endorsed by large countries like China and Russia. The United States, however, immediately cast aspersions on the events, saying that there were serious irregularities. Those words prompted Edmundo Gonzalez and his supporters to come out into the streets today and vent their fury. Many shops closed early or didn't open at all today, fearing the worst. In certain areas it's very calm, it's very tranquil. In other areas it's extremely tense. And in still more, we see thousands of people out on the streets, burning tires, setting fire to different things, even attacking police officers. Nicolas Maduro has warned that the opposition plans a bloodbath and that this could turn into something of a civil war. Mint Press will keep you updated from Caracas as events transpire.
So take it with a grain of salt, right? The whole thing is crazy, but China and Russia say Maduro's the winner, 55 to 44%, and the United States and the CIA and Chrystia Freeland, Justin Trudeau, and Pierre Poilievre all say the other guy won and let freedom reign. Those people burning things are demonstrating freedom, right? Pretty interesting. I'll see if we can. I'll see if there's more. I'll keep an eye on this story. I think it's interesting. Dusty says this is real. According to Elon Musk, this is real. Up to $15 million reward. This should definitely motivate many people. So the Department of State Bureau International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Services (INL) offers a reward of $15 million US dollars for information leading to the arrest or conviction of Nicolas Maduro. And so it's the DEA. Contact the DEA with any tips by phone or email. So you can call them or Telegram or Signal. And US DOJ at, this is email cartel souls tips at usdoj.gov. If the United States didn't like somebody and wanted somebody else, how would they act? Why does the United States get a say in how elections are done or handled in Venezuela? Why does the CIA do exit polling for foreign countries, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And again, I don't think there's any good guys here. I don't think Maduro is a good guy, but it seems like we're being lied to, and I'd love to have the truth of the whole thing, right? Did he win or did he lose? I don't think we'll ever know. Vice Guard says, breaking, Peru officially recognizes Edmundo Gonzalez as the president-elect of Venezuela. Foreign Minister Javier Gonzalez Olecha made the announcement. So it's funny, I hadn't heard of any of the other countries, Cuba, Bolivia, the other countries around Venezuela who have said, yeah, the election results are verified or whatever. I haven't heard that. And of course, like, take it with a grain of salt. I'm not saying, oh, they're verified, so nothing to see here. I'm just saying there's competing information. Other countries are verifying this election, and the press is just, strategically not reporting on that, right? So we're supposed to think 100% Maduro's the bad guy, 100% Eduardo's the good guy, and there is no gray area. There is no gray area, period. Look, Peru has officially endorsed it, so done, right? Like, okay, sure. Sounds good, right? It seems odd to me. It seems very strange. And then this is strange. This is different. How could election booths be locked up? on election day. Wall Street Ape says this was election day in Venezuela. 9 a.m. voters lined up and expected to be able to vote. The polling stations were locked behind gates and guarded with armed guards. America, this is how elections are run when you give up your guns. What an injustice. It's 9 a.m. and they do not want to let us enter to exercise our right to vote. So how does that happen? Is that Maduro doing that, do you think? Or is that the CIA? Is that the CIA's assets doing that kind of stuff? I honestly, genuinely don't know. But it's interesting, and I'm concerned about it. Bell says the killing of a senior Hezbollah military leader in Beirut, and then reportedly Hamas's most senior political leader in Tehran within 24 hours, extinguishes any hope of a ceasefire in Gaza and pushes the entire region to the very edge. Future even bleaker now. Yeah, well, they want a war, and it seems like they're going to get a war. Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Gaza, Israel, Hezbollah, Israel, Lebanon, Israel, whoever else wants to come on in because they've got the backing of the United States. And if Trump gets in, that's not going to change, right? Bibi and Trump are like friends, genuine friends, as far as I understand it. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.